One of the most overlooked parts of planning for retirement is what to do with your time and how to face life at home when you're no longer needed at work. It's not as easy as you may think, and some people really struggle with self-worth in retirement. So on today's show, we'll dive in and help you be better prepared for this next phase of life.
It's time for the My Retirement Clarity Podcast with Lee Perkins, financial planner and president of J.L. Perkins Wealth Management. Get ready for a good dose of inspiration, simplicity, implementation, and of course, clarity on how to successfully prepare for retirement and grow and preserve your wealth. Here's Ben George with Lee Perkins.
Well, glad to have you on My Retirement Clarity. I'm Ben George. He's Lee Perkins, owner and financial advisor over at J.L. Perkins Wealth Management, serving Macon. You can find him online, myretirementclarity.com. Lee, welcome in. How's everything today?
Going very well, man. We got good news from our builder earlier this week. He said he would have us in our house in 45 days. So that was 3 days ago. So hopefully 42 days. Hey man, as long as we're in before Thanksgiving, I will have a happy wife.
Yeah. Hopefully you will be able to get in there. I know it's been a long process for you, so it'll be a relief when it's finally over.
Yes, definitely. We are not built for the apartment life. I'll just tell you that. Although I like it, it's fine. They have not asked me to cut the grass one time.
That's nice.
Or anything like that. But yeah, we're ready to get out to the new house.
That is the beauty of renting, right? And that's why some retirees choose that path for sure. But I know for you, you're ready to get in that house. So hopefully it gets done soon, and looking forward to hearing from you when it's all complete. Yep. Today, we're talking about psychology, and more specifically, we're going to put in the show notes this article we came across by a licensed professional counselor for psychology today. It's called The Psychological Investment in Retirement. And I like this one, Lee, because I think we've talked a little bit about this, the mental side and the emotional side of planning, but so much focus goes into the finance that we often overlook this part.
Yeah, so we talk a little bit about behavioral finance, and we've done that on the show before, just on how we know what we should do with our money, but we get emotional and we do something else, or sometimes discipline is hard to maintain when it comes to our money. But yeah, today's show is going to be a little bit different because we're talking a little bit about, man, what do we do? We've punched the clock 35, 40 years, and now all of a sudden, hey, here we are. Well, what's next? So yeah, it should be a fun show.
So what we're going to do is we're going to analyze some of the points that are in here and really just discuss this mental aspect of retirement and that transition and how people usually get hung up or the challenges they face. And then, of course, how you can overcome some of that stuff and what you should be thinking about right now as you head into retirement. So I got some key points here. Again, we're going to put this article in the show notes. I want to start with this one, Lee, and it makes a lot of sense. Everybody gets used to this life and routine that we build over decades, right? You get up, you take a shower, maybe you go to work, you come home, whatever it is. But we're creatures of habit. And a lot of people don't really consider the consequences of walking away from that habit every day.
Yeah, and these habits, old habits, are very hard to break. We've done the whole work thing for 30, 35, 40 years. And now all of a sudden you wake up and there's no structure in your life. And that sometimes is the biggest adjustment. Some people's body clocks wake them up at the same time every day. I've got a buddy of mine who never sets an alarm, and he wakes up within 10 minutes of the same time every single day. And that's simply because he's been doing the same thing every single day. But so when you transition to retirement, that you have that you don't have any structure and you have to figure it out. And for some people, it's a little bit more difficult than it is to others. I think it's very important to develop new routines, whatever that is, and that includes waking up times, going to bed time. Maybe while you're working, you didn't stay up and watch that 10 o'clock show, but now that you don't have to be up at 6 o'clock, maybe you watch a new show at 10 o'clock or whatever it is. And I would even say food habits are something to change. If you, like me, I eat, well, you can look at me until I eat out way too much, but I eat out for lunch every day. And I eat with some of the same folks 2 or 3 times a week. And so we just have that routine, that habit. And so if you've got a group of buddies that you you do that with at work and you go out with, that's going to change. So there's a lot to consider, and there's a lot to keep in mind when you're like, hey, I've got an extra 8 hours every day that I now need to figure out what to do because I'm not constrained by the walls of the office. So yeah, that routine is going to be very important going forward. And I'm not saying you got to have a brand new routine as soon as you retire, because typically I will ask people, hey, what's the first thing you're going to do when you retire? And they're like, well, I'm not going to do anything for 2 weeks. I'm going to sleep. But then they're like, I've got some honeydew things that I'm going to knock out. But that doesn't take too terribly long. It might take 2, 3, 4 months. After that, you're going to look around and say, all right, what's next? And that's kind of where we got to figure out what those routines are.
Yeah. So just be thinking about that. Are you ready for that new change and structure in your life? So be prepared. Another point here I thought was really interesting. The number one struggle that she points out for retirees is finding consistent, genuine, and lasting meaning. And I guess it makes sense. We're always kind of in search of this, I think, throughout our life, Lee, but even more so when the have more time on our hands and kind of more time to spend with ourselves and our mind. You maybe you struggle with this idea of, hey, finding that meaning.
Yeah, and this one can get a little bit hokey if you go too far off the deep end with this, but I do see this. It is a real thing. I probably see a little bit more with folks who were in leadership positions while they were working. Maybe they were the boss and had people, a team working under them. A lot of people depended on them for guidance and direction, and so they kind of had the boss mentality. But now all of a sudden they're retired and nobody needs them anymore, and so their sense of self-worth goes into question. And all of a sudden they get a new boss, and that new boss is their spouse. And and that can be good news or bad news depending on the situation. So being at home with a spouse all the time is an adjustment for a lot of people. And I've even met with people that are like, I can't be home with my husband or my wife all day, every day. We would drive each other crazy. So they have to figure out that separation, like my parents, when they retired, they couldn't stay cooped up all day with each other. So my dad would go hang out in his shop. Mom would hang out in the house. Mm-hmm. So you kind of figure that out. So I think really people need to start thinking about what they're going to do, how they're going to get their self-worth in retirement. And I'll tell you, more and more people I'll talk to, Ben, are finding that in volunteering for some type of organization that they're passionate about. And some people do go back to work to get a little bit of, not so much for the money because they need money, but just to feel like they're needed. And that's fine. Not going back full time, but part time to just kind of stay engaged socially and emotionally with other folks. But yeah, the volunteering thing is a real big thing. I think it's maybe been 3 or 4 months ago now, I interviewed Joe and Suzanne Best on our podcast, and they do a lot of volunteering. They live close to the Auburn campus there in Auburn, Alabama, and I'm Facebook friends with him, so I see some of the things that he does. He's volunteered at like their Raptor Center. He volunteers at some of the less popular sporting events like gymnastics and equestrian events. And so he loves doing it. And that volunteering has sort of given him a little more sense of self-worth. So yes, pretty neat to hear when people have overcome that.
Yeah, that was episode 67. If you want to go back and check that out, Retirement Community Living with Joe and Suzanne Best. That's fun, and that's a great way to spend retirement, right? It sounds like enjoyable for a lot of people that I think we both know. So I like that.
Yeah, because right now, lots of times people put off doing some of those volunteering because they don't have the time to do it. Mm-hmm. Because you work all day, come home, and you got to do whatever. Cook, do dishes, sit down, rest, relax. Well, who has time to volunteer? Well, once your structure changes, you can make volunteering a priority, and that's exactly what Joe and Suzanne have done. So,
very good. All right, continuing on some other key points here from this article. Reaching retirement is a good time to embrace the person you want to be and enjoy these things you've always wanted to do, and kind of continuing the same line of conversation that we're on right now. But anything that you thought about, this is a great time to go ahead and embrace that.
Yeah, and travel is the one thing for me that comes to mind here because it's the number one thing that people tell me they want to do in retirement, and that's travel. It's at the top of most people's list, and the type of travel, of course, varies from person to person. It varies from simple travel, kind of local in-state, to more exotic locations. So once you're in retirement, it provides the time freedom that you need to take those kind of trips. And I'll go back and plug another podcast. The first client that I interviewed, Larry and Suzanne Johnson, they are my travel couple. They go all the time, everywhere, to some great locations overseas. And that's one of the things that they wanted to do when they both retired, and they are living the dream from a retirement travel standpoint. Now, as far as somebody becoming, like you said earlier, quote, the person they want to be, I think when a lot of people retire, they start to face their mortality for the first time, and a lot of people begin an exercise habit. So I've got several clients who've developed a regular habit of just walking and doing some other things, maybe doing yoga or things like that. But a lot of people walking, and these people are shedding some extra weight, and they're getting in better health. And they've every one of these has told me that it's just simply easier to set aside time for exercise because they don't have to go to work and they can do it the same time every day. I've got a few couples that every day after they eat supper, they eat an early supper at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. And after that, they go walk a couple laps around the neighborhood. And that is just their routine. I think it's also a good time, when you retire, to take up new activities, whether it's golf or camping or hiking. We've got a lot of clients of ours who are campers, and they love to do it. So just get out and do something. Ben, I've talked about pickleball many times on the show, and I think this is a fantastic sport that almost anybody can play. Here in Macon, there's beginner pickleball classes almost every single week. Paul Midkiff is one of the great pickleball ambassadors in the state of Georgia, and he teaches pickleball 101 classes every single week. And so, like I've said before on the show, I've got 150 or 200 more friends right now than I did 2 years ago. So if you're one of those people that are going to retire and you don't have a lot of friends and may not have a lot of social connections and maybe, other than outside of your church, I would tell you to start playing pickleball, and you're going to meet some great people.
You've been ahead of that pickleball trend for a while, Lee. Everybody I talk to now, literally, it's everywhere. The conversation comes up, people talking about playing and being active. But I know we've been talking about it for over a year, for sure, on the podcast. Yeah.
So you're more of your social people are talking about it. You're hearing it other than from just me.
Absolutely. It's everywhere. There's actually a pretty popular show out that I saw recently, like an actual podcast about pickleball that's actually from a younger crowd too. And I know, there's everybody can play it, and it is being played more and more, but you kind of associate it, or at least it was early associated with retirees or people that approaching retirement. But it's everywhere now. And I still haven't played. It's on my list.
That's going to be my question. You got to go play.
Yeah, I want to. And because tennis is probably the sport that I'm not great at. I just have never had the touch to drop the ball in where you need to, and the serve and everything. Right. But I feel like pickleball, we can kind of shrink it down a little bit, control it a little bit more. I want to try it. I want to get around.
Yep. Do it and let me know how it goes. If you're like most people, you'll be hooked. But I say, it's just a great activity. And I'll tell you this, for our people who are our clients or anybody out there who's listening to the show, if you're a single person and you're looking to meet people, and I'm not saying go to the pickleball court and it's a meat market and you just pick out somebody. Absolutely not. Don't be that guy or that gal. But, I would say the best place to find somebody to date, of course, I'm going to always tell you to find that person at your church or at a church somewhere. That would be the first place. But man, if active pickleball community would be a great place for you to go and meet somebody. Who knows, you may find somebody that might be a good match for you. Hey there, sorry to interrupt the show, but I wanted to take just a quick second to tell you about our new e-newsletter called Uncommon Sense. Now, I know the last thing you probably want is another email from a financial firm giving you the same old industry jargon that every brokerage firm out there gives you. I get it. Nobody wants that stuff because it's boring. But our newsletter is anything but boring. Information plus entertainment is infotainment. And that's the goal. And that's what Uncommon Sense is. So we want to inform you in a very entertaining way. So you'll get stories of how financial planning works in the real world and not some corporate boardroom of a Wall Street firm. You'll also get access to a lot of other great resources. So just head on over to our website, www.myretirementclarity.com, and click on the Uncommon Sense logo. Just put in a good email address and you'll be good to go. Now, back to the show.
All right, let's go through a couple more points here. And this one's really, I think, caught my attention a little bit. But she says that a lot of people, well, maybe not a lot, some people view their time off or this break from work and what they've always done as a more stressful period because they're not doing something productive or tangible like working like they have for many years.
Yeah, I had a little bit of not problem with this one, but I hadn't really talked to a whole lot of people who are stressed out because they're not working anymore. For in my experience, it's been just the opposite. Now, I've talked to some people who are maybe a little bit bored, but boredom doesn't usually stress people out in my experience. But what I found is for the most part, people don't really miss the work, but they do miss the interaction with others. I have had some people tell me they miss some of the challenges and the problem solving, some of those kind of things that they were able to do at work. But for the most part, man, they miss the people. And I know a lot of companies, especially some of the larger, companies. I've got, a lot of clients that work for Georgia Farm Bureau and a lot of clients that work for Geico. Those folks are in the office, back in the office now, of course. And so they've got a lot of people have groups of coworkers that are friends outside of the office, and so they're able to maintain some of those relationships. But some people go to work, and that is their social, I guess their social network. And then once they retire, if they don't have that outside, that can be a little bit difficult. But yeah, make sure you're have something to do in retirement where you're not bored and you got people that you're interacting with. Because the last thing I want you to do is regret retiring because you don't have anybody to interact with. That's not a good plan.
All right. I'm going to lump these last two together because they kind of go hand in hand. But as they talk about some of the challenges facing retirees when it comes to the emotional side. So, what can you do to maybe prepare yourself? So she points out two things. First, you have to be willing to emotionally invest, right, in this personal growth like you would invest in your financial side. And then number two, the earlier you start, the better.
Yeah, definitely. Don't wait until you're retired to start thinking about what you're going to do in retirement. That's one of my number one pieces of advice. Get that game plan ahead of time on how you're going to fill those 8 hours a day that you used to work, and start thinking about those things. Now, I'm not saying you got to put it together and write it down and come up with a rigid schedule, but just have an idea, try some new things. When I think about personal growth and development for right now, I'm thinking about it in a work context. I just got back from a 4-day conference in Dallas where I was with 300 other financial advisors sharing ideas and talking about how we can be better financial advisors and serve our clients. But that's from a career development and personal growth. But after you retire, why not invest in personal growth in other areas? I mean, I was thinking about a few things. I mean, you could certainly do things like, a lot of people are learning new languages. I've never really had a desire to learn a new language. I do speak a little bit of Espanol. I was the president of the Spanish club in the 10th grade. So some of that has stuck with me, but I'm certainly not fluent in Spanish. But, a lot of people learn a new language, or maybe I would say look at attending a marriage conference or something like that. There are churches around here that do that fairly regularly, not because you got a problem with your spouse and we need to work things out, but you can always go to these things, and you will always pick up some things that might help you be a better spouse to whoever your spouse is. And I would say in the growth and personal development, man, this is a great opportunity to spend some quality time with people that you haven't seen in a while. Go to lunch with them, invite them over for dinner, and kind of, I'm not saying make up for lost time, but you now have time to do the things that you didn't used to have because you were at work, and then we got home from work. You didn't want to take the time to go go spend with somebody that you don't see very often.
Yeah. Well, some good points in this article. Again, we'll put it in the show notes. So for you, Lee, personally, over at J.L. Perkins Wealth, have you seen or how have you really seen these clients mentally prepare for retirement before they get to that big date?
Yeah, the conversation usually seems to be the same. People figure out fairly quickly. I would say within about 3 months, people are starting to settle into new routines. And then I hear the same thing from every one of them. They say, I don't know when I had time to work. Now, sometimes that is spending more time with their grandchildren, maybe doing a little bit of carpooling and things like that. Now, I'm not saying let your kids dump their kids off on you so they can go and live their best life. But you want to do some of that, I think. But, again, my clients are spending more time with their grandkids. They're volunteering and doing things, and they say yes to a lot more things that they used to just say no to. And all of a sudden they're busy. So the caution in that is don't be so busy that you don't take time for yourself to enjoy some alone time and have some peace and quiet every once in a while, because I don't want you to get out of the rat race of your office and then get into the rat race of being that retired person that everybody dumps on because they don't think you have anything to do. And that does happen. That is a real thing.
Well, what's the role of the financial advisor in all this? Because I know we talk about planning in terms of finance and what you should be investing in and what products you should have and just building that strategy. But what role do you play on this side?
I think just being there to listen to people and kind of give them my opinion, that's really it. And I can share some experiences of other clients and tell people what I see happening in the real world. Like I can tell people what I see happening in the real world with their money. You're going to spend more money when you're in your early 60s and early 70s, and then after that your spending stops because you're not doing a whole lot. And once you're in your 80s, not everybody, but for the most part, they don't spend money. People are scared to spend money. Social Security checks go into the bank and it just stocks up, and the people die with a lot of money. So I can share stories like that. And so I try to encourage people, hey, go out and spend your money while you're young enough and healthy enough to do it. But also say, hey, go out and let's do some of these things you want to do, the travel and things like that. Let's knock those out before your knees give out or before your back goes bad. Let's do these things while you're young enough and healthy enough to do it. So that's probably, I would say, what my role is, to just kind of, sometimes I have to give people permission to spend their money. Now they can spend their money at any time, but they're asking for permission. They're like, Lee, do you think we can do that? I'm like, absolutely, you can do it. So I think that's it, just to kind of be a sounding board.
Very good. Well, if you have questions about this or you want to discuss, just kind of how you can prepare this side of your retirement, set up a meeting with Lee. It's very simple. Talkwithlee.com is the website. It'll take you directly to Lee's calendar. You can get on there and find a time to sit down with Lee and discuss these things or anything you have on your mind with financial planning. And I know one piece of the puzzle that you always are discussing with people, Lee, are taxes. And we know taxes are still historically low across the board, and tax planning is as important as ever, which is why you have this book offer for people.
Yeah, taxes are historically low, and my fear is at some point they could be historically high. And so to prepare for that, I think you have to face the reality that I think taxes are going to increase in the future and to determine the best cause of action for you. So the book called Diffuse is sort of a guide that gives you some actionable items that you can implement on your own, and you can implement with the help of a professional. And if you want a copy of that book, text the word Diffuse, DEFUSE, to 478-475-2050. Once you text that, it'll give you a link, and you can click that link and put in your name and address. We'll send you a copy of that book. And then if you want our help, our assistance in helping you implement any of that, you can reach out to us. And like you said earlier in the show, Ben, the best way to get in touch with us and schedule a call with me is go to talkwithlee.com, and you can grab a 15-minute spot on my calendar, and I'll see how I can help.
Very good. We'll see how you can help with these questions, Lee. A couple of mailbag questions that came in this week. I want to kick things off with Grace, who is in Macon. Says, this is a second marriage for both me and my husband. We file a joint tax return, but we keep all their financial matters separate. Is that okay, or should we be doing things differently?
This is a pretty common question, Grace. There's a lot of moving parts. I don't know how old you are. I don't know if there are kids involved. So I can't really answer for certainty. I will tell you, I met with a couple last week that is in their late 60s and they just got married. They're doing a joint return, and they are doing exactly what you're doing. They're keeping everything separate. His beneficiaries are his kids, her beneficiaries are her kids. And I think for that situation, that's probably best, because when an older parent gets a new in a new relationship, new marriage, I think the warning antennas, the warning flags on the kids kind of go up, wondering, is this person trying to take money from my parent? So, again, Grace, it all depends on your age. If you guys are 25, and this is a second marriage, you probably, I would say you might want to do things together, and hopefully you're going to be together for a long, long time.
Very good. Thanks for that question, Grace. And we'll take one more from Donald. He's in Milledgeville. Says, I'm not retiring for a few years, but I'll be 62 next month, so I can start my Social Security. Should I go ahead and start it and use that extra income to get my house paid off sooner?
I'm a big fan. I have become more of a big fan of starting Social Security early, just because I've seen people die early and not be able to enjoy the Social Security they were entitled to. But you said one thing in the beginning of your question, is you're not retiring for a few years. So there's an earnings test. So if you are making, usually if you're making over about $35,000 a year, you're not going to get any of your Social Security, because for every $2 over the limit, you give up $1 of income. So my gut feeling, Donald, is that you are making more than this. So I don't think starting Social Security right now would be a good option for you, because you're not going to get any of it. So just wait till you retire. Once you retire, draw Social Security, and then you can pay your house off at that point.
All right, very good. Again, follow up with, if you want to really dive into your situation and get a true answer from Lee, you can always go to talkwithlee.com, set up a meeting, and that's the best place to kind of go through all the details. Let Lee find out what he needs to really help you out with your situation. We do appreciate your questions, and if you have them, send it in to us. MyRetirementClarity.com is the website. You'll find all the podcasts there as well, plus other great resources and tools that Lee and his team at J.L. Perkins Wealth Management provides you. All right, Lee. Thanks again for everything today and taking us through this. A really interesting article, and we'll put it in the show notes for anybody that wants to read it. But most importantly, we have to pay attention to both the financial and the emotional side of retirement.
Yep, that's it, man. Good show. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you for listening to My Retirement Clarity. For Lee Perkins, I am Ben George. Take care.
Lee Perkins here, and I want to thank you so much for tuning into the show today. If you like our podcast, we would be honored if you would share the show with others. And one great way to do that is by posting the show to your social media pages, or by just telling others about it. Either way, we would really appreciate it. And of course, if you do enjoy the show, we would appreciate it if you would give us a 5-star review, and this certainly helps other people like you find our show. And if you want to learn a little more about our firm and how we help people have the best retirement they can possibly have, go check us out at www.myretirementclarity.com. There are a lot of great resources that you can access directly on the website. And of course, if you want to have a conversation with me, you can visit www.talkwithlee.com, and this will take you directly to my calendar. And there you can schedule a 15-minute phone call so I can learn a little bit more about your situation. Of course, everybody is not a great fit for our firm, but if I think we can add value and put you in a better situation, I'll let you know, and we can certainly talk about the next steps. So thanks again for tuning into the show, and we'll catch you next time.
Investment advisory services are offered by J.L. Perkins Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor and insurance agency. Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice. Always consult with a qualified tax, legal, or investment professional before taking any action.